How are you doing, Rod?
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Doing well. Good weekend?
Yeah. It's, I guess it's pretty bad when you can't remember what you did.
Well, it might be pretty good. It means nothing bad happened or you'd remember it, so that's good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
All right, let's jump right into it. I before we get to fall camp opening on Friday and the fact that football is back, huge weekend for Alabama in terms of recruiting with the second champions cookout over the weekend. You had a recruiting notes package out on TigerInsider.com last night, but everything that I read, and I'll let you pick it up here in a moment, that you had to report was positive on some really big names that Alabama's involved with, whether it be Darnell Wright, Clay Webb, Daxton Hill, others. It seems like this weekend went really well for Alabama based on what you wrote last night.
Yeah, now let me be clear. All those guys were not at the cookout. Daxton Hill was not there. Clay Webb was not there. But we did do recruiting notes that included those guys, not just the cookout guys, but, they had a really solid group of the commitments that came in. Pierce Quick, Tanner Bowles, Paul Tyson, Talia Tongo-Vailoa, King Makuta, the linebacker out of Georgia. All those guys came in and contributed to helping to the efforts in terms of recruiting some of these guys, they had in that are uncommitted. So I think, they had a strong group of guys that are committed, but guys like Wandale Robinson, who, Gary, you see a guy like Jalen Waddle, and then you watch this guy, Wandale Robinson, is very similar as a slot receiver, kick return guy, has a little bit of, when you look at him, you think of a bunch of different guys. By the way, he's from Frankfort, Kentucky, but he reminds you a little bit of Pro Throw, reminds you a little bit of Palmer, Waddle. I mean, he's got just a mixture of all these guys, and he was here this weekend. I think Alabama's got a great shot at him. We'll see what happens. Michigan, Ohio State's in there as well. A couple others probably in there too. So, we'll see what happens. But I think he'll probably make a decision relatively soon, maybe within the next couple of months, if not sooner. He's supposed to come back on an official visit to Alabama in September. Darnell Wright's the number one offensive line prospect. Well, I should say regarded by the networks, I think, is the number one offensive tackle prospect in the country out of Huntington, West Virginia. And he came with his mom, so that was big that he had an opportunity to get her down here. This is not the first time he's been here. He's had some trips and really likes Alabama. We felt Alabama's led Tennessee for the most part. Ohio State's in there as well. So, we'll see what happens with him, but the visit went extremely well. And again, a host of other guys that they're in on. You mentioned Daxton Hill. He's the elite safety out of Tulsa Booker T. Washington, probably the number one safety in the country. Last week, Gary, the source at Oklahoma that we have were telling us that the Sooners were basically third at best, and it was Alabama and Michigan. And, the feeling has been that Alabama's been the leader, but they thought last week that Michigan was the leader. That was their opinion. But on my end, I keep hearing very, very positive things about Alabama. So I think Daxton Hill may make an announcement within the next week to maybe month. And I feel really good about where Alabama is. And I know a lot of Alabama fans, everywhere I go, they want to know about Clay Webb.
I was going to ask you. I'm glad you brought it up without me prompting you, because I do want to know exact. Because Alabama fans, for whatever reason, Rodney, just seem really worried about Clay Webb going to Georgia or Auburn instead of Alabama, the big center guard from Oxford.
Yeah. And again, he's made several visits over to Georgia, obviously, but made several to Alabama as well. And I think, Gary, part of it is he has family, in the Athens area, I think, certainly in Georgia. And, I think fans start putting two and two together and think there's some sort of an influence. But listen, let's be straight up on your radio show, okay? Kirby Smart this is a great player. And that's first and foremost. These coaches are certainly, they target the players that they feel, are to be great players for them.
Right.
So that's number one. But make no mistake about this, Gary. Kirby Smart is put a special target on some players that he feels, are highly targeted by Alabama. And Clay Webb is one of those guys. And I think this is obviously a priority recruit, not only because of his talent, but also because of the fact that I think Kirby Smart he's targeting guys that I think that he knows Alabama and Nick Saban really want. So this is going to be a real battle, but I feel really good about where Alabama is, at this point.
Defensive line class is shaping up as one of the best in the Saban era, and that's saying something. Alabama has some big-time commitments, but by no means is Alabama done. What are you thinking, Rodney? 2 more, maybe even 3 more DLs in this class?
Well, again, this is late July. Things change, needs change a little bit every now and then. Decisions change, depending on, what player you can get at what position. I think, where we are right now, probably Alabama will be eyeing a couple of more defensive linemen, I think. At least certainly one. Obviously Ismail Sopsher out of Amity, Louisiana is a big interior guy that I know would be a high priority. Marvin Leal out of Texas, there's no way you could turn him down. I personally think he's the best one I've seen on tape, committed to Texas A&M. I think that's going to be very difficult. Even though I think DeMarvin really likes Alabama, I think right now going into Texas when A&M has their clutches in a kid, I think it's going to be really, really tough. But, he's a guy certainly still in the mix. Patui Tuatele from Hawaii is another highly regarded defensive lineman who is in the mix. The kid in Utah, Ika is his last name, I-K-A. And I think they call him Apu is his nickname, APU. So he's another guy that's 350 pounds, Gary, that moves really, really well. Probably would lose a little bit of weight, to play on this level. But, he's not in bad shape necessarily right now. But so those are 4, names that really, and there are others. But, you get a couple of those guys, and you've probably had your best defensive line class under Nick Saban.
All right, that's a good recruiting recap from Rodney. I want to look ahead to this week, Thursday's the Knicks Kids Luncheon, which is kind of the official beginning of football season because the next day, Alabama always kicks off fall camp, fan day, media day on Saturday. Obviously, with what we do, Rodney, whether it's TiderInsider.com or the TV show or radio, any media person, we're ready. We're ready to see this football team get on the practice field. How excited do you think the players and coaches are? Because it's work and you're preparing for a season, but to get out on that practice field after the summer, trying to stay conditioned, coaches trying to deal with all they deal with, to actually get out on that practice field on Friday, how exciting do you think that is for a football player and football coach at the University of Alabama?
Well, I'm sure, Gary, obviously getting out there in that heat is something that they probably, you don't always look forward to. But at the same time, with these workouts that Scott Cochran's been putting them through, to prepare them for fall camp, they're eager to get going football-wise. That's what it's about. And, they've had all the preparation now to get ready to get out there and start playing, and that's what they want to do, play football. And then, once camp gets going for a while, what that means. They want to start looking forward to getting into the season and playing. So it's just kind of one step in the process that I think they're looking forward to taking that, like I said, the next step. And so I know that they're very eager, and I know that a lot of us are very eager to get out there and kind of eyeball this team. It's always good to get out there that first day, which is Friday, and you walk through that gate and you kind of get an idea of, what you're looking at, just athletically, and it's always pretty amazing, and it has been since Nick Saban's been here. You walk out there and you say it can't top what I've seen in the past, and then you look out there and you say this is the best looking 85 I've ever seen. So it'll be real interesting to see on Friday.
Wrapping up with Rodney Orr, you can follow him on Twitter at Tider Insider, at Tider Insider. Of course, you can catch him on TV every Tuesday night at 6:30 with me, Tider Insider TV on WVUA 23. Of course, TiderInsider.com is the easiest place to keep up with all of Rodney Orr's information. Saturday's fan day, open practice, the only one of the fall. Also that morning, it's media day, which is a big day for us because we'll get to hear from Tosh LaPoy and we'll get to hear from Mike Loxley, the new coordinators. And it may be the only time until the postseason that we get to hear from them at all. Also, from a player standpoint, we get to interview more players than we do at any other time until the postseason. But based on what Nick Saban has said about the quarterbacks, Rod, do you think that Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa will be made available to us on Saturday, or do you think that he'll probably keep them off that field Saturday morning? What's your feeling as far as media access to the two quarterbacks?
Well, I would say this, first of all. This would be my expectation. I'll answer your question second. I would expect when we walk out there to see them on Friday and then on Saturday, you're going to see the normal rotation. You're going to see they'll step up in the drills that we get to watch. They'll step up in the same order. Jalen Hurts will be there, Tua, Mac Jones, whoever else is there as walk-ons, whatever it is. But it's not going to be anything different. There's not going to be any tipping of the hand or anything of that sort. So people trying to make something out of that, Gary, they might as well just forget it. So I wouldn't pay any attention to that. Secondly, your question on making them available to the media, just my personal thing was I would be surprised.
I would too.
If that were to happen. I don't expect it.
Because if you make one available, you really need to make them both available. And even Mac Jones, too, for that matter. And my feeling is we'll see. But on Saturday, I hope so, but I doubt very seriously the quarterbacks will be there. Who knows? We'll find out. It's something for us to look forward to, that's for sure. As far as Toss-LaPoy is concerned, we know how enthusiastic he is. We know what a good recruiter is. We know how hard he works and how intense he is on the field. But he'll take that first step as the defensive coordinator. And what I mean by that, it'll be his first chance to get behind a microphone representing himself as the defensive coordinator at Alabama. What do you think his message will be on Saturday morning? Because everything at Alabama is about a message. Do you think he'll have a message to try to calm the fans in terms of his experience or lack thereof and try to reassure people that he's ready for this position? Well,
first of all, here's the deal. If Nick Saban hired him as a defensive coordinator, then everybody should be reassured. That's first and foremost. I think what he would, you look at Tosh-LaPoy, he's come up under, Kirby Smart. He was under him a couple of years, under Jeremy Pruitt. So he's had an opportunity to learn from those guys, and not only that, being with Nick Saban. So Nick Saban promoted him. He's a guy that's never called the defense, obviously. Is there a concern or a question, I guess, among fans, among media? Maybe so. Certainly that's something that you ask, or think about. But, again, I think probably he would say, listen, Coach Saban's giving me this job because he believes in me. He trusts in me. He's seen me work. He knows what I can do, feels confident in what I can do. I feel confident or I wouldn't have taken the job. And, if anybody were to ask that question, that's probably the way he would respond. And he would probably say, hey, guess what? We're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing. We plan to have a really good defense. We're going to be prepared. So I think that's probably what he would respond if anyone asked him, about that, about his comfort level.
And for Mike Locksley, the new offensive coordinator, of course, he's been a head coach in the past at the D1 level, so he's used to all of this as far as the media is concerned. But if the quarterbacks aren't made available, and if they are, we'll get to ask them. But certainly Mike Locksley is going to have to field the quarterback questions, whether he likes it or not. And they're going to come, and they're going to come from more than one reporter. How do you think, and I know he'll visit with Coach Saban, how do you think he's going to handle those questions in regards to the quarterbacks and the plan for them?
Probably exactly the same as what we've heard, that they're, both those guys, all three of them are going to get some reps, throughout camp, and they're going to continue to develop them and prepare them for, the season and see how they progress throughout. And then, that decision will be made, which guy will be the starter and the pecking order and all those things towards the end of camp at some point. And, probably that will be, I would imagine that would be the end of it. Now, he may talk about some of the differences between the two. He may talk about, how the offense would be adjusted if Jalen was the starter or the main quarterback, primary quarterback versus Tua. How those things might be a little bit different. But other than that, I would not expect a whole lot different than what we've heard.
Back to the defense, because Scott Moore was on earlier, and he said he still thinks this is the most talented defense in the SEC. And I know that that's what we expect from Alabama, as you said, to have a top-tier defense. But the fact remains that this year at least, there are many more questions on defense than offense. Regardless of the quarterback situation, that offense is loaded with talent. It's loaded with experience. It's loaded with playmakers. Defensively, they lost 8 guys, and the entire secondary basically is gone. I mean, I know Deontay Thompson's played some, but the entire starting secondary, a couple of the top reserves, there's a lack of depth, at least proven depth at the defensive, interior line positions. Inside linebackers got some depth concerns. Even outside linebacker now with Terrell Lewis out. I mean, there are a lot of questions around this defense going in, Rodney. Are we giving too much credit to what Alabama's been in the past and not looking close enough at all they're going to have to replace? I mean, I think this is going to be a good defense, don't get me wrong. But initially, I think there could be some growing pains here. I just do. I don't think that every year you can lose this many guys and just expect the guy that steps in to be as good a player as the guy that was ahead of him, at least initially. I'm concerned about this defense. Are you?
Well, I don't know yet. They've the last 2 or 3 years they've replaced a lot of guys, and I thought, here comes a big drop off, and it really wasn't. Now, last year the issue obviously was, the injuries. I mean, they just took a toll, and clearly that can't happen this year. Some spots, obviously, inside linebacker is very, very key. You lose a guy or two there, and you're in deep water, I think. So I think from that standpoint, there are certainly, as you said, some questions. You've lost a lot of experience in the secondary, lost a lot of talent. I think in some ways there may be guys back there as a whole, not necessarily one individual, but as a whole, the group may be more talented than what some of the guys that they lost last year. I think Savion Smith has a chance to be, just pure talent. I think Savion Smith, Trevon Diggs could be really an outstanding pair of corners if they're the guys that start. I think that you obviously lost Minka, which he's irreplaceable. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, that I've seen here at Alabama. In the secondary, and but you've got Deontay Thompson, and to be honest with you, I think Deontay Thompson can be better than some of what we saw last year.
Okay.
I really do. I like him a lot. I think Xavier McKinney's a promising young player. They've got other guys. Jai Carter's been around working at the star spot. Jared Mayden's been around a while. The young players that everyone talks about, Joshua Jobe, Patrick Surtain, Jalen Armour-Davis, Eddie Smith working at safety. All of these guys, I think, as a group, I think there's an opportunity, Gary, that as they develop, it may be a more talented group overall than the one they lost. But, to your question, I mean, really, you have to kind of see how they start to progress during fall and how they play. But I think right now that they have a chance to be outstanding. But now you lose Deron Payne, that's a huge loss. But if Isaiah Buggs, Quentin Williams, and Raekwon Davis play up to what we're hearing and how well they performed in the spring, they're going to create a name for themselves, and I think it'll be a very good one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Final thing, Rodney. Friday, the contract extension announced, the pay raise for Saban. Alabama didn't have to do this. I mean, everything was in a good situation, but they extended through 2025, clearly to make a statement. But in a lot of cases, you see these things and you just say, no big deal. But I really believe in Alabama's case, this is a statement. And I do think that they're saying to recruits and they're saying to other teams, Nick Saban's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I believe them. I think in this case, you know what, Rodney, right now, this morning, I'm predicting to you that the guy coaches through 2025. I think he goes through the contract. I really do, which I guess would put him at, 74, 75 in that range. But I just don't see any reason he can't do it. I think the university wanted to put this out there. I think Saban wanted it out there. And I think he, as we've talked about, he's fired up about fending off all these guys that are after him and all these teams that are trying to bring Alabama down. And I sense that he's as enthusiastic, maybe even more so, for this first day of fall camp as he was in 2007 when he hit that field for the first time as the Alabama head coach.
Oh, no doubt. I think he's obviously still got it. I think we saw last year at the end of the year, I think he's revitalized with all the competition around him. I think he's revitalized with the way everything turned out last year. You saw what he did with his new staff. He didn't sit still. He's not complacent, obviously. He still seems to have a ton of fire. I don't think there's any doubt that he wants to go as long as he can. Whether to be to 2025, I have no idea. But yeah, it would not surprise me because he does still have a lot of fire. Now, obviously, that's a long way away. What's that? 8 years from now? 7 years?
7 years.
We'll see what happens. But would not surprise me in the least. I mean, there's other coaches that have done it, not a lot, but some. And if you look at him, I think at where he is right now, he's probably in better condition than those guys were at his age.